Right, it's as good as any. So we get started. My name is Hilario Gutierrez, and I'm here to give a talk about the physics of abstract art based on what I have discovered and learned. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's brought me here. Jordan Nye, who's the manager of the facility, and the owners, Mike and Jen Tanzi. Thank you for having me here. This show is called The Decade of Season. And The Decade of Season was a title that I chose to start understanding how I wanted to create the work. And what I do is I actually create a story, an idea, a feeling, and from that feeling it defines the whole show. And then at that point, every piece is named to correlate with each piece. For example, The Decade of Season, which is a namesake piece, started out with the whole feeling of what the decades would be, a thought, a feeling. And then each piece acquired a name before it even got started. Well, what happened about 20 years ago, New Year's Day, Barbara and I were in the Monument Valley area at 3 o'clock on New Year's Day on Thunderbird Mesa. I had an epiphany. I wasn't an artist, and then I was an artist. It was a weighted, full epiphany. Now, if I heard the story, let's say 10 minutes before, I would probably go, well, that's a very nice story. Well, it happened to me. And after that, the last 2 days of our little trip, I was obsessed. I've never painted before in my life. I was artful, but I was never an artist. And I can explain the difference. We got home, and I started painting. I just started painting. And I did my fine art for 2 years. I would learn to control my paint, and I did my landscapes and my florals, and I felt that I was making a painting. Something wasn't quite there. But I knew I had to keep doing this, learn to control my paint and understand it. I'm not formally trained, but I am formally aware because I did train myself with the examples of very fine artists. Then one week, in a week's time, I discovered Dan Dominga, which is a Native American artist here. I discovered Gerhard Richter, who was a German artist who, by definition, would tear the paint off the canvas to create that chaotic, natural look in a very abstract way. And then I discovered an artist in California. His name is Anthony Nespiosos. And he did very childlike carelessness of imagery. Well, over the years, after 2 years of doing fine art, I decided I'm going to do abstract. But I still didn't quite have a definition of what abstract was about. I knew I wanted to do it because it felt right. It was starting to speak to me. Then, over a couple of years again, I realized that I had to create a definition of why I was doing it. For myself, everything has to have a definition. It has to be defined. So how do you define emotion? How do you define taking paint and creating an emotion out of it? And I had no choice because I had clients who actually would buy my work and they would say, I do not like abstract art, but I had to have one of yours, and you have to tell me why. And it was like deer in the headlights. They were uneasy. So I spent the following 2 years just trying to define it. And after I was done, I came up with what I coined as the physics of abstract art, according to Hilario. But to go back to what I said, I believe that an abstract is probably one of the purest form of communication that we can do. I'm not talking about fine art, because fine art presents itself with a feeling of visual communication. We can both exchange what it might be. But how do we exchange what an abstract will convey to each other? Each one of us has that emotion, but there are variables of that emotion based on our own experiences. So what I had to do in order to create what I call the authority of the canvas is I had to find and define it by creating a formula. And the formula is soul, heart. The heart is basically my awareness. I'm human. And my origin would be the the aspect of wanting to pull from the desert in their point of view is modern. And then from that, after translating through that, I find myself putting a truthfulness in the canvas, because then when the beholder looks at the painting, they make a connection. They like abstracts, which is their point of view. They also would like a desert look. They like that form, pulls from their heart, and they make a connection. Now, not all of us need that definition. A lot of us like the colors and so on, but we still need to have an emotional, subconscious definition of why we like something. And abstracts can create that feeling. I really feel that abstracts is, again, one of the most truthful way that two people can communicate. And abstract comes in many forms. For example, the cave paintings in France, where primitive man 30,000 years ago drew the balance and the form. They didn't know anything about that, but it meant something for them. It was their whole life. They were conveying what they felt. I'm not saying that this is a cave painting, but I'm saying it has that same primitive, personal, human connection that we all bring in together. And not everybody needs that. But if you're looking for a definition of why an abstract can find itself in your heart to keep looking at it and wanting it, most of us don't know why, but we do want it. Now, along with that in mind, what I've also done is I've come up with an explanation of every aspect. For example, I had to unlearn what I've learned. Now, that's been used before, I know, by a lot of artists, but it's actually a truthful thing. I did my fine art. I understand the discipline behind it and the rewards of its finished work. But I have to unlearn that and realize that when I'm moving paint on the canvas, I have to utilize that sense of physics of heart, soul, point of view, origin equals, or the completion. I have to pull from that. It has to mean something. So what I'm doing is finding myself define it. And one of the best definitions of defining the pleasures and the acceptance of an abstract is a young child is drawing. Some of you may have grandkids or children. They're drawing for an hour, and they stop, and they bring a painting up. No one says, "Oh, honey, fix that painting, fix the clouds, put some clothes on your people." That this is not right. You instantly, without challenge, without question, accept it. It's a pleasing thing. The childlikeness and the chaos is pleasing to you. It allows you to enter this atmosphere, and you make a connection. That's what I try to do. I try to take away every aspect of guarding of yourself, a challenge of your knowing, and just let your feelings flow through it. It sounds very simple, but it is simple. But a lot of us don't want to look at it that way. We want to fix it. We want to repair it. We want to clean it up, because that's our human nature. Our human nature is to constantly bring forth a more perfect aspect. So I have to bring this chaos, this childlike chaos, into my movement. It's very difficult because you want to fix it. And the moment I have to recognize a correction of my work, then I'm making a painting. I'm not letting it flow through. Excuse me. It's the weather. So, in itself, my work is very simple. In itself, it does bring interest. But everybody's trying to look for, why am I liking this? Why do I like this? Why does that work for me and that doesn't? Or I sense that, and that is. A lot of it is that there's a gender in abstract painting. There's a gender in everything. Now, no, it's not female or male. It is a difference or separation of clarity. And I guess the best way I can describe it is that there's a masculine and feminine. And I've learned the difference, or sensed the difference. And I've learned to combine that in paintings. Some people like this, or they don't like that, and vice versa. And it's not that they don't like it, it's just that it doesn't do it for them. And the best way I can describe it is I found two floral artists that helped me discover that. First of all, Monet, very feminine. They float, they contain, they're gentle, they're nurturing. And then a local artist here, Douglas Otwell, who painted masculine florals. Very strong background, very fairies, they're surviving, the wind is blowing. It was a defiant aspect of conflict. By knowing that, I have sensed how I can combine that to give you, the beholder, a sense of, I prefer this, I don't prefer that. Because basically they're all abstracts, but it's amazing how someone walks up and goes, that's the one, I feel it. And that's what I coin, that's the most difficult aspect to do. But the one thing that I really discovered in doing the abstract is that soulful connection. Yes, a Dolly the elephant can take a brush and move it across, and she is putting paint on the canvas. But when you're going through your abstracts, trying to, or your different type of your style or likes and dislikes, you still, even if you like fine art, you still use the same physics. There's still something there that moves you. I discovered that when I was doing a tour through paintings of the Titanic. They were all the same horrible things that went through the artist, but one caught me. It was the brush stroke, it was the movement of paint, it was the vibration of the way the paint was applied on the canvas. And that's the one I liked, and I analyzed that. And I realized that, and the work here is an example, is that when I'm painting, the eye can sense all your feeling. It can sense movement, pain, weight. It is the one thing that we utilize to sense everything we're aware of. So in order for me to convey that, I use gravity, I use staccato, I use vibration of the paint. Everything here vibrates, and it has a sense of vibration and movement. So your subconscious sense that energy of movement, but it's someone is very disciplined, someone is very chaotic. It leans it more toward a organic aspect. We have a affinity for the earth, and why do we prefer granite over other surfaces? They feel well. But because I'm drawn to the desert, and that's my inspiration, I pull from the topography of the desert, the sense of how it's exposed and weathered in chaos. And in my book I call it The Chaos on the Canvas. And there are some aspects that I do find very interesting. I'll go from a couple of quotes. For example, chaos is perfection undiscovered. It's not some kind of corny, like tomorrow's the future, but in itself it's true. We try to explain this crazy movement of paint, crazy movement of a formula, but when we discover and we solve it, it becomes simple, perfect. You can't change it. And my clients have found that in the paintings. They experience it in their home, and they find themselves finding something different in the atmosphere a year down the road, or the light hits it differently. I didn't realize you had this on the inside. And that's another, I guess, talent that I'm really proud of, is I'm able to create an atmosphere from one distance to another distance. It changes. You discover the paint doesn't degrade. It allows you to find something inside the canvas as you get closer. And that's the technical aspect. But I believe it's all part of the rich chaos that then becomes for the client, a perfect atmosphere. Anyway, the show here, to kind of go back on that, each piece has a name, and the name belongs to the canvas. And again, I would write a phrase or a statement like an early monsoon. Arizona, where I'm from, comes from the huge windstorms you would have. And that name of the painting would guide me through the completion of the piece of work. It told me that it was complete. Because again, how do you know an abstract is complete? And again, that's the truthfulness. That is the sincerity and the authority of the canvas. it means something. And if a client knows or has a sense of a monsoon, because they've been to an area that has that unbelievable windstorms, they can find the rhythm of that at whatever level they choose to. But the one thing that's very important is that when my work moves into your environment, it does morph and shift and change, and it finds itself settled into where you might put it. But that's it. If you have any questions, I would love to answer some questions. You're supposed to call me a hack, but that's okay. You can yell it out. But I'm a big relationship. I like to have people. I won't use the word challenge, but stir me up, because maybe I've missed something. There's something that I've missed in the physics of what I'm trying to explain. I don't want to go into the technique, because it's like it ruins the romance. I try to keep you focused on the feeling. And most of us, we question our feelings, because technically you're just putting pen on the canvas. Yes, you're right. But it's the sincerity and the truthfulness of my humanity that finishes the atmosphere. So you can connect with that, because we're all human. We all have the same experience, but a different variable. We know weather, we know vibration, no feeling. And it's there to entertain your emotions, not entertain your sense of realism of what it is, but what it feels. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. No question is if it's the color, if it's the size, or why did I use the 3 panels to give you that level. Well, that's a good question. I'll answer that one. This particular show, I chose to do triptychs and quads, because season, what do we know by seasons? We have 4 seasons. So I combine the individual panels. So knowing that they're individual panels, it gives you a sense of relationship. It's like a chapter in a book. If it was one solid piece, it would look nice too, but you would sense that it is a painting. There's something different about it. You feel a rhythm. That's all part of the rhythm, all part of the movement of the paint. This is a perfect example of unknowing what, I have to unlearn the perfection of painting. This is an example of seasons remembered, and when we remember, there's always a little hole in memory, and that's why it's chalkier. This is present. It's crisp. It's happening this season, so everything is real clear. And this is called thin ice. And then the thin ice, of course, gives you the sense of its coldness and the level. But the season, it's a very precise, careless approach of the paint, and it gives you that natural, free, organic feel. But you can find, it's not, I will not say that it's summer, spring, it's nothing to do with that. There's nothing to define it. It's just whatever panel feels what the season might be. But
Ari, on that one there.
Yes.
Why are those the rectangles on each one?
They're in the different sizes too. That's part of, most of us would like, I made an exact size. It is just to present an unknown interest. We all have things in our heads that float around, and it's something for you. If you choose to consciously try to identify it, it won't happen because it doesn't mean anything. But it is a careless, perfect placement of a non-essential item that creates a balance for an abstract. I felt without these little vignettes, it became a road. This breaks up, and it is very careless. It's chipped away and broken and careless. Again, this is this piece here is a I would say I won't say challenge, but it's more of a risk. This is a very risky piece, because what I mean is that if you choose to break it down for its application, its imperfect lines, and then it becomes about the painting. But memory has many holes. You may remember something, but it's that bits and pieces of a tactic kind of thing, and we just fill in the holes. This is a past memory It's not perfect. It's drawn in the sand. It's passed on. So it is left with a lot of carelessness. But within the carelessness, there's an exactness. Because again, chaos, once it becomes accepted and understood, is a perfection within itself. Until you try to discover something again. But it has a very childlike carelessness to it. Even in the white, there's a texture that within the texture, what is very disciplined is the fine detail of color hidden within the atmosphere of this painting. And that allows you to discover that later on, look at that. Or discover a vibration, or you realize there's a pink within the orange gray. It is a organic combination of colors. It isn't a painting to be defined. It is a form of movement and color to be experienced. Because you may just find a relationship with just this area, and the rest you're trying to discover, or this aspect. It is again, in order for this to be sincere, I as an artist had to go through that formula, heart, soul, or soul, heart, point of view, origin, equals. It has to mean something to me. It has to be explained on every level in order for you to then find that connection and know that everything you see or feel or start to define is what was intended, because that's what I try to intend. It's another way of communication. I call it a third language. Abstract is truly a pure form, but we have to, as artists, have a sincere approach behind it. Now, I'm not addressing any other artists, I'm just addressing mine. I had to do that because in my book I talk about 3 people staring at abstract art. Excuse me. 3 people looking at an abstract painting. The first person immerses themselves in the atmosphere, wanders through, and instantly makes a connection. The second person finds themselves looking at it and they like it. They don't know why, which is most of us. But they like it. I don't know why. And the third person says, you know, you smell your little paint in the canvas, you might call it art. I'm sorry, it's not. But each of them, even the person who doesn't like the abstract, will use the same formula which I'm describing. It will work. It does pertain to even fine art. We all make a connection to it. It is something that we make a relationship and creates a desire. Art is truly the only way humanity can sincerely make a connection. I really believe that. This isn't, and our forefathers in the ancient period, they did a very intricate aspect of art, very mathematical. We're at a period now where we are so technical that we can render anything more than reality itself. So how do we go back and find ourselves just dreaming and feeling and being alone within something that is going to be ours, and yet have a relationship? That's why when your kids come up with a painting of stick people, you don't tell them to go back and fix it. You love it because it's truly them. It's what they did. It's what came through them. And that's another thing. I can't make a painting. I have it come through me. This is very hard because when I try to make a painting, I want to do an abstract. It's me and I'm by myself. And that goes back to the epiphany. Whatever I had passed through me is what's really coming through me when I paint. And the definition of that is really for me to define that. Because, again, I had clients who said, they're shaking their finger at me and they do not like abstract, but they had to have one of mine. And you've got to tell me why. I mean, I heard that a number of times. Anyway, there's a lot more, but I'll start repeating myself, but I would like 1 or 2 questions. You know, anybody, just
Are the panels all connected?
Okay, good point. Again, they can be connected, but they are hanging separately. And I did, on some of them I do have joining, but again, it gives you a sense of rhythm. If it could have been one painting, but there's something about us saying a single item, a single environment, a single atmosphere. In our minds, we'll break these up and we'll separate them, but we'll realize the relationship, but they are. They can be in many ways. They can be tacked at the back, or these are actually hung separately. And it's not difficult. You just measure it out. I prefer them touching or just an eighth of an inch apart, so you know it's a sense. A lot of people will separate them with more than an inch. It just becomes a couple of paintings placed side by side. Again, preference. Everybody hit yes there.
What was your finished surface?
The finished surface, this is all acrylic. Again, I won't go too much into the technical aspect, but I will say it's acrylic, it's archival, it's on canvas, which I will say I'm very proud of because I can create this on canvas.
This is on canvas.
Yes, it's not on board. Now, this is just me, but I look at my work as, I'm going to be dust one day and my work is going to continue. For a historian to 100 years to take it off the old wood, they can. It's gonna survive. It's a very, very heavy canvas. That's the heaviest canvas you can buy. So I know it's going to endure centuries. And there is a protective coat over everything, and the historians, that's what they'll remove and reply. But it's there. I won't give you the fine details, but we've put a painting over the years through torture, and for a year, and it's and this is but that's a technical aspect, and it ruins the romance of the feeling. Most of your questions I ask you to kind of explore on your own to find out. Again, it's just an abstract, but it gives us that human nature. It vibrates. It's staccato. There's a feeling within it that allows you to be free to enter it, and it's just your own experience. Plus, it looks good in your room too. Yes, sir.
You referred to fine art, and so I can separate fine art from your art, and I look at your art as fine art. What do you consider fine art?
Okay. Let me define. It's a very good point. It is fine art in the sense that of my ability and my talent. But fine art for me, and I didn't define it. Again, I'm not you probably have more knowledge of art than I do. I'm a painter. I'm talking about the masters who are enduring for life. Their brush strokes and some of the work that is just excellently executed in the most precise way, where they render from the composition to the subject matter to the brush stroke. I mean, it is really a science in knowing how to create it.
But it's pictorial, and it's not abstract.
Yes, but you may have 5 paintings of the same thing, but one will grab you. And you'll say, well, it's just a nicer painting. But there's still something here there's something about the brush stroke, the movement of the hand, the composition. The eyes might be familiar to you. It is everything that we buy and everything we look at in art is a relationship. And some relationships repel us, some are a little cautious, and some will invite us in. And I feel that with my work. I've had clients who go, I don't understand this one, but this one, yes, this one. Well, they're the same movement, they have the different color, but it pulled them in differently because most of us cannot admit that we are a relationship species. And we employ that on everything, whether we're in a club or whether we drive that car or whether we have a certain kind of art. It's a relationship. And by knowing that, I don't use it. I utilize it this is how I feel. And maybe nobody wants to know how I feel. And that's why the work, it's good. But I have some clients who are very dedicated to the work because they want to know why they love it. And I tell them it's because of you're free to enter it. And I created an atmosphere because you can do that. It is fine art in the sense that it does that to you. And I probably didn't do the proper definition, but that's about it, really. I mean, maybe I didn't explain it to you. My definition, everything I utilize to explain is strictly on an emotional level, not a technical level. I mean, I can talk technical and our faces will change. I want you to be a little, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I want you to dig down. I'm hoping that'll be one little tile in the mosaic of your thinking of art. And one day, and I've had some clients, they place that little tile of what I said in, and it starts to become clear. I've had them say that. They don't have to tell me that, but they have. Because I can tell in their face, like, hey, this makes sense now. And I'm not here to talk about the art. I'm here to talk about the art that I've made that's come through me and give you a viewpoint of the physics of why I do this.
What appealed to you about Doug Avdol's work?
He was one artist that I defined as a masculine floral artist. And when I looked, in fact, I actually copied it when I was early. I did his work. I didn't want to do the Monet florals. They were too feminine. And I can combine them, but it was very feminine. It gave me a very feminine feel. But Douglas, gave me that masculine. His background was very abstract. His center area was visual, but it was static. But his foreground, front, was very active, over the cliff, over an edge, wind blowing, and it became crisper and clear. And the colors and the strokes, I felt male. I mean, I could look at it and say, I don't like this floral. It allowed my psyche, my sense of who I am to relate to it. Now, I like Monet, but yeah, I don't want to delve into it. But Douglas said, yeah, I can do a floral. It's like, let's have a beer together or something. But I had to step back and say, okay, what's going on here? And I thought about it, and I came up with a gender. And then when I went and put it in my paintings, it took me to another level. It made me define why certain colors and feels and combinations. I did there's a number of styles don't have here that were very masculine and I do it's feminine. And I can see people who gravitate toward it. I will admit, when I do a very feminine piece, it just beats me up. I can't get it out. And then I gotta do something strong and heavy, like the Breath of the Storm. And but that Breath of the Storm actually beat me up too, because it was the last piece of the whole show. And I thought I would do a neutral piece, but it said, we're gonna have beer and bratwurst, and we're gonna watch football. We're gonna get into it. I want to have challenge and endurance, and I want it to be suffering, and I want to feel drums and cellos. I want to feel weights. That's a good way of putting it. In fact, you brought it by, and I could use that masculine feminine with music, because you find it in music. What's the cello make you feel like? It gives you a different sense, other than a singing violin or an oboe, where it was up there. So it gives you a different sense of feeling. And art isn't excluded from that, whether it's imagery or whether it's abstract. It's resounding, and that's why I employ a lot of staccato, because it's subconsciously, it's not music, but it has a vibration. It moves in all the vibrations at the base of that staccato. It gives you, it's not static. Some artists contain it in a circular motion and within the canvas. I like to use gravity. I utilize drips, because in nature you have that. You have erosion. Erosion doesn't move upwards or sideways, as generally. It moves down, kicks down, and moves. Even thin ice has wisps of movement down to continue. Subconsciously do it. I have found that if you try to define it word for word, it then becomes very thin like smoke, and then it goes away. Some other definitions you need to keep to yourself because they're yours to endure. I'm sorry, did I answer your question? It is a lot in itself. It isn't much, but it is a lot because it allows, again, to be metaphoric, a little tile that fills in that whole mosaic of your thinking, and maybe it might just make something a little clearer, or that you ponder on it.
Do you have a favorite color?
I don't have a favorite painting. This is very good. My talent is as far as my arm reach. My world is very small. When I'm working on the painting, and Barbara can vouch for this, when I'm finished, it has to go away. It has to be stored. I can't hang it. Because what happens, I start doing the same thing. No, I don't have a favorite painting. I do have one hanging in the house that I like, because maybe I'm lying to myself. Maybe I do a favorite painting, but I know the minute I have a favorite painting that it becomes that painting, and I'll just do all those colors over and over again. But I do have them that I look from afar, and I just, oh, that's nice. But I don't want to become a favorite. It doesn't work for me. because every time I started, it's like another relationship. And my colors are determined by the title of every show I do. Now, I do commissions, but the commissions have come from a show or a title, and I can do that. I can still do that. But when I gather up the decade of seasons and I do a little synopsis, they have it on the website. It talks about how we ancient people relied on memory to judge their safetiness and their harvesting, and they had people who could do that in part of the tribe. And I remember that, and I chose that decade because it's very poetic. 10 years. But it tells me that I can keep going on based on what I've lost or gained. It just continues us. And the whole synopsis is very early man. I have been known to do some very modern work, and I can, but it still pulls from a very primitive aspect. And that's my influence. But it doesn't mean it can't find itself in some place that's modern. The Decade of Seasons contained me. It told me how to find the names, and then the names guided me to the complete painting. And that's the whole sense of the truthfulness. Not just done and well, let's put it all together.
Where are you from in
I'm from
Arizona?
we live in the around Gold Canyon area by the Superstition Mountains. We moved there about 7 years ago, and I built a big studio. It was the next step, and it was a good move for us. Okay. Well, I really want to thank everybody who's come. I really appreciate it. This is my first time in the gallery, and I plan on being here a long time.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.